They moved her crib into my bedroom. My wedding photo was face down in the hallway closet, my name scratched off the mailbox. Not a word, not a warning, just gone. She wore my robe, called my kitchen hers. He watched, said nothing. I served Sunday dinner. They ordered sushi. I knocked on my own bathroom door. She said, "Is this an emergency?" I said nothing. But I started folding documents. They thought I was old and tired, but I was holding the deed. And the silence that would evict them. They didn't say it outright. Not at first. That's the thing about being called a burden. It doesn't always come in words. Sometimes it comes in sighs, in glances, in the way a voice softens just enough to sound like pity, but sharp enough to wound. Brandon called on a Wednesday, said he and his new wife needed a transition space after the wedding. A few weeks, maybe a month. Just until the lease on her place runs out, he said, like I should have expected it. I told him yes before he even finished the sentence. I always said yes to Brandon. I said yes when he asked me to co-sign his first car. Yes when he dropped out of college for the third time. Yes when he missed Christmas 5 years in a row and called it stress. So I cooked up a welcome dinner. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes with extra butter, his favorite green beans with bacon bits. I set the table like I used to when his father was alive. Cloth napkins, real glasses, the kind you don't put in the dishwasher. I even lit the candles. I thought they'd take the guest room. I thought we'd sit together again like we used to. I thought, God help me, I'd feel like I had a family again. But when they arrived, Savannah didn't even look me in the eye. She walked in like she already owned the place. Long nails tapping on her phone screen, sunglasses still on even though it was nearly dusk. She called me Margaret. Not Miss Ellis, not Mom, not even Ma. Just Margaret, like I was the housekeeper. Brandon didn't correct her. That night over dinner, she complained about the mattress in the guest room. Too stiff, too small, too dusty. Brandon glanced at me across the table. I saw it coming. Mom, he said gently, like he was about to offer me a choice. What if Savannah and I use your room for now? Just so her back doesn't act up. I stopped cutting my chicken. Your father and I shared that bed for 32 years. Savannah blinked slowly and said, I just don't want to wake up in pain, that's all. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I just nodded. That night, I went to sleep in my own bed. I left the door cracked open like I used to when Brandon was small and afraid of thunder. But the next afternoon, I came home from the grocery store and found all my clothes in boxes, neatly stacked outside the master bedroom. Door locked, keypad installed. I stood there with a bag of oranges in my arms, looking at my life packed like I was checking out of a motel. Brandon came down the hall smiling, casual. It's just easier this way, Mom. You don't have to knock or ask anymore. You have full access to the guest room. Savannah stood behind him in my robe, the one his father gave me for our anniversary, her hair wrapped in a towel. She had a mug in her hand. Queen, it read. She took a sip and smirked. No words. Just that smirk. I slept that night in the guest room. No outlet on the left wall. The closet door off its hinge. A draft that crawled up through the floorboards and into my bones. I didn't sleep much. My knees throbbed. I stared at the ceiling and thought about every inch of that house I'd painted, scrubbed, paid off. Thought about the winter I worked overtime at the library to cover the mortgage after Robert died. Thought about the time I caught pneumonia, but still showed up to clean the gutters because no one else would. Thought about how much I gave up so that Brandon would never have to ask for anything. And now I was a burden. Not with words, not yet. But I heard it in the silence. I heard it in how Savannah sighed every time I walked into a room, in how Brandon stopped saying good morning, in how my lasagna got pushed to the back of the fridge untouched while they Uber-eated Thai food 4 nights in a row. I'd find receipts on the counter, napkins in the sink, lip gloss stains on my favorite coffee cup, and I'd say nothing. Because I was raised not to stir the pot. Because good mothers endure. But one morning I came into the kitchen and found my wedding china packed in boxes. Labeled, donation. There it was, the line. I didn't cross it. I erased it. I walked back to my room, that cold little guest box with floral wallpaper I used to hate and now clung to like it was the only place still mine. I opened the drawer, pulled out the manila envelope with the property deed, still in my name. Full, unshared. Paid in cash 15 years ago. I laid it on my lap like a weapon. They didn't know. They had no idea. Savannah told Brandon later that day she wanted to turn my room into a nursery. I heard her voice through the wall. It just makes sense. She's basically retired. She doesn't need that much space. Brandon grunted, didn't defend me, didn't hesitate. I started walking to the library again, same way I did when Brandon was in school. But this time, I wasn't checking out books. I was meeting my lawyer. Janine. Smart woman. Wears her hair short, speaks in facts. She looked at the deed, nodded once and said, "How fast do you want to move?" I said, "Before they repaint my walls." She smiled. That night, Savannah posted an Instagram story, building our future. I turned off the Wi-Fi, lit a candle, sat in silence. They thought I was a burden, a tired, harmless old woman with nowhere else to go. But I still held the deed, and the silence that would evict them. I stopped making coffee for 3. No one noticed. The mornings became quiet, cold, long. Savannah started waking later, drifting into the kitchen in silk robes, yawning like the house bored her. Brandon would be already gone, heading to a job I helped him get with a recommendation from my late husband's cousin. They didn't ask if I needed anything. They stopped speaking directly to me unless it involved dinner schedules or garbage bags. So I learned to speak back in silence. They made noise. That's what they were good at, the kind that wasn't loud, just constant. A rolling background hum of entitlement. Savannah's voice on speakerphone telling her sisters how exhausting it was to live with old energy. Brandon's feet stomping down the hallway, pretending not to hear me call his name. Laughter echoing from the master suite, that used to be my room, where I used to read scripture beside Robert, wrapped in blankets, safe and known. Now I sat in the guest room with a flickering lamp and a broken closet door. I crocheted the same square for hours, unraveling it at the end of each night, not because it wasn't good enough, but because nothing I made was needed here anymore. They had friends over, couples with matching tattoos and small dogs in handbags. They used my good wine glasses and didn't rinse them. Savannah hosted brunch shoots in the dining room where my husband once carved the Thanksgiving turkey. Ring light in one corner, a white backdrop in another. She moved my grandmother's lace runner and shoved the china cabinet aside to create space for her brand. "Vintage doesn't photograph well," she said. I wasn't invited to the table, not even for a taste test. She took over the kitchen, not by force, by neglect. Left the fridge door open while deciding which greens gave her bloat. Left the gas stove greasy, the cabinet doors half open. I asked her once to wipe down the counter. She blinked and said, "Oh, I didn't know you still use this kitchen." I stopped speaking after that. It was easier. I moved like a ghost, a presence without weight. They filled the space with themselves, their plans, their curated life. I watched from corners, small shadows. They posted captions like "building our legacy," while I folded my wedding quilt tighter each night, afraid it would disappear next. But I wasn't sleeping. I was planning. Janine, my lawyer, started sending me comps, 3-bedroom sales in our zip code, average days on market, cash buyer patterns. She didn't ask many questions. She didn't have to. I didn't cry when I read them. I didn't flinch when I saw the numbers. I started photocopying documents at the library. The librarian recognized me from my old volunteer days, asked if I needed help. I smiled and said, "Just keeping my records clean." Back at the house, Savannah complained about the swing set in the backyard, said it ruined the aesthetic. Brandon nodded, mouth full of avocado toast, like the swing his father built with his own hands wasn't worth remembering. "We could put a hot tub there," she said, "turn it into something functional." I wrote a list in my notebook that night. Not groceries, a checklist. Title deed, utility accounts, maintenance history, appraisal contacts. Brandon stopped calling me Mom. He said hey instead. Savannah called me M, short, efficient, like I was a brand name she didn't want to wear in public. They were winning. That's what it felt like. They had the space, the energy, the youth. I had the walls, they had the rooms, I had the foundation. One day I came home from the pharmacy and found a new welcome mat outside the front door. The McCarthy's, Est, 2023. My name wasn't anywhere on it. I didn't take it off. I didn't say a word. I wrote the date down in my notebook, circled it twice. Savannah bought new pillows for the master bed and threw my old ones in a donation bin without asking. She asked Brandon if I'd be upset. He shrugged. She'll get over it, she always does. That night, I sat in the car in the garage for 20 minutes, engine off, silence on, just breathing. The kind of breathing you do when your ribs feel like they're folding in. I hadn't driven anywhere new in months. I missed grocery aisles. I missed talking to the cashier about her grandkids. I missed being someone people looked in the eye. So I drove, nowhere in particular. Ended up at a church parking lot across town. The sanctuary doors were open. I didn't go in. I just sat there and listened to the music through the windows. The choir was rehearsing. A woman's voice, high, broken, beautiful, cut through everything I'd been holding. I cried for the first time in weeks. Not loud, not ugly, just steady, like something was being released without asking permission. I wiped my face, drove home, and didn't say a word when Savannah asked where I'd been. She didn't really care. She just liked knowing. That week, I put the final copy of the property survey in my purse, tucked it under my wallet. The bag never left my shoulder, even in the house. I stopped crocheting, I stopped trying, and they thought that meant I had given up. But what they didn't understand was that silence is a decision, and some decisions come with signatures. They were still sipping wine, still calling me extra, still laughing like they'd won. But I wasn't angry, I wasn't broken, I was preparing. They moved my body into the guest room, but they forgot. My name never left the deed, and I was done asking for space. I was about to take it all. I heard them through the wall. Savannah's voice was soft, syrupy sweet, the way you speak when you're convincing someone of something they should already resist. I was thinking, if we really want to start fresh, we should convert her old room into the nursery. It's bigger, better light, and, let's be honest, she's barely using it. Brandon didn't answer right away. That silence told me more than his words ever could. I sat on the edge of the guest bed, hands resting on my lap, still. My knees ached, but not from arthritis. From restraint, from holding every emotion inside for months while they poured wine and planned a future on bones I laid with my own 2 hands. The master bedroom. My bedroom. The one with the windows that face east, so the sun would touch my husband's pillow first. The one where I sat for hours the night he passed, holding the silence like it was his voice. They wanted to paint it yellow now. Hang floating shelves. Install a mobile of cartoon giraffes over the spot where we used to kneel to pray. I didn't say a word. I just stood, walked to the closet, and opened the small black safe I kept beneath the winter blankets. Inside was the deed, folded 3 times, untouched since the day I paid off the mortgage. My name in sharp ink. No co-owners. No amendments. Just me. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling until the floral patterns on the wallpaper started to swirl like water. I listened to Savannah laugh from the other side of the house. She called it our suite in a phone call. She was filming again. I could hear the fake joy in her voice. We're so blessed, manifesting our next chapter. I reached for the manila folder under my pillow and ran my fingers over the corner. The next morning, I baked cornbread. I smiled at Brandon like I always did. He asked if I was okay. I said I was just tired. He didn't look long enough to see past it. He never did. Savannah didn't even greet me. She was too busy pulling paint swatches out of her purse, laying them across the dining table, my table, with her iced coffee leaving rings on the wood I polished every Saturday for 20 years. Do you think this one screams baby boy or is it too coastal? She asked no one in particular. I folded the laundry in the guest room. Quietly, precisely. I ironed every edge, even the clothes I didn't plan to wear again. Later that week, I called Janine. I didn't ask for advice. I gave instructions. She didn't question me. She'd seen this story before. Women like me, silent, invisible until the pen touches the paper. She asked how quickly I wanted it done. I told her I wanted closing before the baby shower invitations went out. She laughed once, then said, understood. The buyer was a young couple relocating from Chicago, cash ready, no contingencies, wanted a quick turnover, and didn't care who currently occupied the property as long as it was legally clean. Janine handled the paperwork. I signed with a blue pen I had saved from the church's bake sale. It felt poetic. They didn't notice the difference. Not right away. Savannah kept planning the nursery. She ordered a cloud-shaped bookshelf. She showed Brandon a mood board on her phone. Greens and creams, a moon lamp, soft textured rugs. Brandon looked proud, like a man who believed he was providing. I stopped cooking dinners altogether. I started packing a little at a time. A few photo albums, my crochet needles, my mother's Bible with the cracked leather spine. I kept the rosewood jewelry box and my husband's dog tags. Everything else, furniture, curtains, dishes, I let go of quietly. One morning, Savannah passed me in the hallway and said, "You're finally cleaning out? Good timing. I want to turn that closet into a changing station." I looked at her, just looked. She sipped her smoothie and walked away. That afternoon, I took the folder from the safe and slid it under my mattress beside the Bible. I whispered something to the Lord, not a prayer, a promise. By the following Tuesday, Janine had a closing date, the end of the month. I asked her to schedule sheriff's notice delivery for a Sunday, mid-morning. Just as Savannah liked to host her mimosa brunches, I wanted them dressed. I wanted her lashes on, her camera charged. I wanted him holding that glass like it was a trophy and not a placeholder. Janine didn't flinch. It'll be done. The house felt louder in those last days, more alive, like it knew. Savannah danced barefoot through the living room with a paint roller. Brandon was humming again. She called her mother to ask what color crib skirt looked more earthy. I walked past them like wind past a window. They didn't feel me anymore. I didn't need them to. I was already gone in every way that mattered. I made lists each night, phone numbers to transfer utilities, the new condo address scribbled on a post-it I kept under my pillow. Tyler, my granddaughter, was the only one I told. She hugged me like she understood more than a 15-year-old should. "I can help you move," she whispered. "No, baby," I said. "You help me rebuild." On Saturday, I watered the rosebush one last time. The same one Robert planted on our 25th anniversary. The soil was dry, the petals curled. I trimmed a single bloom and placed it in a glass jar by my bed. That night, Savannah practiced a toast in front of the mirror. "To new beginnings," she said, "to family." And I smiled, because they thought they were building a nursery. But I had already turned the house into a transaction. The Sunday morning sun came in quiet. I'd already been up for 2 hours. The cornbread was cooling on the stove. The bacon had been crisped just right and drained on paper towels. I set the table with real plates, poured orange juice into glass tumblers with etched rims. I wasn't invited to brunch, but I cooked anyway. Old habits die hard. Savannah's voice floated down the stairs, sharp and rehearsed. "Brandon, are you wearing that? We're filming today." She was in one of her silk robes again, barefoot, face half-made, lashes pinned and curling upward like she woke up with joy. Brandon mumbled something about needing more eggs. I placed a fresh batch of biscuits in the oven. I moved slowly that morning, not because I was tired, but because I wanted to feel every step. The tile under my heels, the warmth of the oven, the silence inside me that no longer trembled. They still thought this house was theirs. That this life, the filtered one they posted to strangers online, was stitched in stone. But the floorboards remembered, the kitchen tile remembered, the house itself remembered. And in a few hours, so would they. Savannah walked past the kitchen, paused, then wrinkled her nose. "You cooked?" Her voice was light, almost amused. "We're doing takeout today, but thanks." She didn't wait for my response. Brandon followed close behind, offered a sheepish half-smile. "You didn't have to go through the trouble, Mom." But I did. I always did. Outside, I heard a car pull into the driveway. Tires slow, doors open, voices low. I didn't move. I kept stirring the grits. They knocked once, not a polite knock, not the knock of a neighbor, a knock that had weight. That said, "We have paperwork." I dried my hands on a towel, folded it neatly and walked to the front door. Savannah reached it first, pulling it open with a bright smile that died the moment she saw the uniform. The sheriff stepped forward. Beside him stood Janine, calm as ever, documents in hand, sunglasses still on. Her voice was even. "This property has been legally sold. As of this moment, the current occupants have 30 days to vacate. This notice has been filed with the county clerk. A formal letter will follow." Savannah blinked. Brandon appeared behind her, barefoot, still holding a half-eaten croissant. "What is this?" Janine handed him the envelope. He took it, eyes scanning, stopping. He looked at me. "You sold the house?" His voice cracked. I nodded once. "You can't do this," he said, louder now, like volume could rewrite the law. "We live here." "No," I said, voice steady. "You stayed here. There's a difference." Savannah started to speak, but the words clumped together. You're kicking out your own son after everything we've done for you? I stepped forward and looked her dead in the eye. You boxed up my life, you wore my robe, you called my kitchen yours, and now you think I owe you comfort? Her lips parted, but nothing came. You locked me out of my own bedroom and called it a favor, I said. You turned my home into your show, my silence into your permission, and now you get to learn what silence really sounds like. Brandon was shaking his head. You don't understand. We were building a family here. Then build it somewhere else. The sheriff didn't flinch. He stepped forward. You have 30 days to vacate. After that, enforcement begins. Savannah turned away, slammed the door. Brandon followed. For a moment, all I heard was the sound of their footsteps. Then nothing. No protest, no apology, just silence. Janine and I stood on the lawn. The neighbors peeked from their curtains, pretending not to watch. Janine looked at me. You good? I nodded. Better than I've been in years. We walked toward her car. I didn't look back. That afternoon, I sat at the same dining table Savannah had once used as a prop for her brunch content. I ate in silence. The grits were still warm, the bacon still crisp. I placed the cornbread on a plate I hadn't used in months. My own blessing, my own grace. The house felt different. No more tension, no more thin smiles stretched over entitlement. Just walls, just light, just the faint echo of power settling back where it belonged. Later I lit a candle in the guest room, the same room they'd pushed me into. The same mattress with the lopsided spring. I sat at the edge of the bed and stared at the rose I'd clipped from the garden the day before. It had bloomed fully overnight. When evening fell, Brandon knocked on my door. Not the bedroom, the guest room. I didn't open it. He didn't knock again. I waited until the sound of his footsteps disappeared. Then I turned off the light and closed my eyes. For the first time in that house, I slept without listening for doors creaking, without waiting for the sound of my name said with disappointment. I didn't sleep like a guest. I slept like a woman who'd reclaimed the deed, on paper and in dignity. They had 30 days, but I'd already moved on. The condo wasn't big, 2 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, hardwood floors that creaked a little near the hallway, and a balcony that caught the morning sun just right if you brewed your tea by 7:15. The paint was fresh, the windows clean. The kitchen, small but quiet, no half-open cabinet doors, no lip prints on my favorite mug, just space, stillness, mine. I didn't take much with me. A quilt my grandmother sewed when she still had her sight. A tea kettle that whistled too loudly. The Bible with names written in fading ink down the back pages. Births, deaths, a few dates I still couldn't read without wincing. I unpacked them slowly, deliberately, like setting the bones of a new life. The first night, I sat on the balcony with a blanket over my legs and watched the sky turn the color of bruised peaches. There were no heels stomping overhead, no laughter leaking through walls, no brunch guests pretending not to see me. Just wind, just light, just quiet. That kind of quiet feels earned. Tyler showed up 2 days later with a backpack and a half-eaten apple. She didn't say anything at first, just hugged me tight and stayed that way for a long time. I didn't ask how she found me. I didn't need to. Can I visit? She asked, still holding my hand. You can stay as long as you want, I said. That evening, we cooked dinner together. Nothing fancy, just collard greens, skillet cornbread, a bit of catfish I'd picked up fresh. She danced around the kitchen like she used to when she was little, dragging the hem of my old apron behind her like a cape. I let her. We played old records on the stereo. She asked questions I didn't know how to answer. I told stories I hadn't told in years. After dinner, we sat on the floor and went through photo albums. She pointed at pictures of her mother and father from back when things still looked like a family. I didn't speak ill of them. I didn't have to. The silence between snapshots did enough talking. I gave her a key before she left that night. One of the spares. A little brass one I had cut at the corner hardware store. She held it like it meant more than metal. I think it did. I told her, you will always have a place that's yours. Don't let anyone push you into the guest room of your own life. She nodded, teary-eyed, and tucked the key into her pocket like a secret. I started going back to church on Sundays. Not the old one. A new place, smaller, warmer. No one knew my history there. No one looked at me with half pity. I volunteered at the senior center every Thursday, helping organize estate planning workshops for women over 60. The room filled up faster than I expected. Faces like mine, names like mine, stories different, but not really. One woman held my hand after a session and whispered, "You gave me permission to protect myself." I didn't cry, but I felt something shift inside me, something like restoration, something like peace. One afternoon a letter arrived, no return address, just my name in shaky handwriting I knew too well. Brandon, 1 page, no pleasantries. "Ma, I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted to say I'm sorry." I let someone else's voice drown out my own. I thought I was doing what was best for everyone, but I was really doing what was easiest for me. Kendra and I split. She said something she couldn't take back. I deserved it. I lost the house. I lost you. I lost who I was. I'm sorry. I folded the letter once, tucked it into the drawer where I kept my charger and a few peppermint candies I no longer craved. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. Some wounds stop bleeding but ache when the weather shifts. It was enough, but it wasn't everything. A week later, Janine sent over the final closing balance, neatly itemized. A tidy confirmation that what was once a home had become history. She'd included something else, a brochure for a new fund launching at the community center, seed grants for women starting over. A sticky note attached. "You inspired this. Want to help lead it?" I called her back and said I'd match the first 5 donations. "Margaret," she said softly, "you're building something bigger than a garden now." I didn't say anything. I just nodded and breathed. Tyler and I baked sweet potato pies that Sunday. One for us, one for the church fundraiser. One for the new neighbors who'd moved into the house I'd sold, a young couple with a baby on the way. I knocked on the door and handed over the pie. The wife smiled, wide and unsure. "You must be Miss Ellis. The agent said you were the previous owner." I nodded. "Just wanted to say welcome. That house has been through a lot, but it still holds love in the walls." She took the pie like it weighed more than sugar and spice, like it carried history. That night, I stood on the balcony with my tea and looked at the stars. The rosebush in the corner planter had its first bloom. I touched the petals. Soft, resilient, rooted. The first time I saw Brandon again was months later. He showed up at the church fish fry, alone. No Kendra, no camera, just him. He looked smaller, not thinner, just emptied. The kind of hollow that comes from losing something too late to fix. He asked if we could talk. I nodded toward the edge of the parking lot, beneath the old oak. We stood there a while before he spoke. "I don't know how to make it right," I said. "Then don't try. Just don't do it again, to anyone." He nodded, tears in his eyes, shame clinging to his clothes like smoke. He asked if I'd ever let him back in. I said, "My peace is not something I give away anymore. It has to be earned." Tyler walked over, handed me lemonade, and stood beside me. Didn't speak. Just stood there, tall and steady. He looked at her, opened his mouth, then closed it again. She didn't flinch. He got the message. He said he should go. I let him. As he walked away, I didn't feel triumph. I felt freedom. Not from him. From silence. The kind I used to carry like a wound. Now I carried it like a sword. And I didn't just sell a house. I reclaimed a name, rebuilt a legacy, and planted a life that only blooms in peace. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not scream. It's not argue. It's not even to try and convince someone who's already made up their mind to erase you. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is quietly reclaim what was always yours, with dignity, with clarity, and with a calm hand on the pen. This story wasn't just about selling a house. It was about honoring the years that built it, about choosing peace over begging for space, about remembering that age does not make us invisible, and silence is not the same as surrender. For those of us in our later chapters, we know the sting of being called too much or not needed anymore. We've lived long enough to watch the world get louder while expecting us to get quieter. But the truth is, our wisdom has weight. Our names carry history. Our silence can be sharp when wielded with purpose. And our boundaries? They're not cruelty. They're clarity. If you've ever been made to feel small in a space you helped build, I want you to know something. You don't have to yell to matter. You don't have to fight to prove you belong. You don't even have to stay in rooms where you're treated like furniture. What you can do is walk away with grace and leave them standing in the echo of everything they took for granted. The lesson here isn't just about revenge. It's about self-respect. It's about listening to the still voice inside that says, I deserve better than this. and then taking action, not with anger, but with resolve. In practical terms, that might mean revisiting your will, updating your deed, calling a lawyer, having a quiet conversation with yourself about what legacy you want to leave behind and to whom. It might mean protecting yourself legally or emotionally or both, because you are not disposable, you are not a burden, you are not finished. You are the foundation someone else is standing on, and you still have the right to decide what happens next. So as you reflect on this story, I invite you to think about your own life, your own boundaries, your own quiet power. And if you've ever been in a place where you had to choose between peace and people-pleasing, I hope you chose peace. Now here's a question for you. Have you ever had to walk away from something or someone to protect your peace? What gave you the strength to do it? Share your story in the comments. I promise someone reading it needs to hear it. And if this story touched you in any way, I'd be honored if you subscribe to the channel. We tell real stories here. Stories of wisdom, resilience, and the quiet kind of power that grows with age. And if you'd like to support us in sharing more voices like this, feel free to make a small donation. It helps us keep these stories alive and remind the world that growing older means growing stronger. Thank you for watching. You are not alone, and you are never too old to reclaim your story.